So this meeting is also being recorded. So if that's a problem, then we would suggest that you can watch the video and the recording subsequently. If it's a problem for you with the recording, just letting all have the option or the freedom to choose. So back to the goal of the project, it's to better prevent and manage child abuse. And why this is so important is because child abuse is prevalent and in every society. And when we can have the awareness of what constitutes child abuse, we can have more skills to prevent it. And that's what we're going to do in this project. The goal of the project is also to improve youth, families, schools, and community awareness about child rights, because the more that we understand and can take the perspective that children have rights and need to be protected, and we can understand how we can all play a part in protecting children. It is also to understand the nature and the impact of adverse childhood experiences. This will be a significant part of the seminar tonight, will be about adverse childhood experiences and the impact and the nature of that they have in us. Because once we can understand how the long-lasting and the severe consequences of experiencing trauma and abuse and neglect as a child, the more we can understand how important, again, it is for us all to partake and be involved. And this project also gives voice to empower youth, families, communities, which is what we're all here about, so that we can make choices and advocate for the protection of vulnerable children and youth. And we will also provide in the project resources that are available to the community. So what are child rights? Child rights are essentially human rights, specifically adapted to the child. Sorry, can you please mute? Please mute. Thank you.
I'm in a meeting, I'll call you back.
Sorry, Norma, I need you to mute, please. Mute your microphone. Thank you. Thank you. Again, children's rights are human rights, specifically adapted to the child, because children have rights. And we often, because children are vulnerable and they're in the care of adults, we don't often think about them as having rights because they are vulnerable and dependent. But their rights are very important for us to understand, because it does change the way that we can advocate and work towards protecting children more. And so the Convention of the Rights of the Child, which we'll talk further about, and I'll pass this on to Pastor Jermaine right after this, of 1989, defines the term of child. A child is any human being below the age of 18 years, unless under the law applicable to the child, majority is attained earlier. So I will now pass this on to Pastor Jermaine. And in fact, Pastor Jermaine can also lead with a prayer, which now she will, of course, I think all of you know Pastor Jermaine very well. So I'll just pass the mic on to Pastor Jermaine to lead with a prayer, as well as more awareness of the rights of children.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I want to acknowledge our Bishop Clifton Joseph, and one of our pastors, most senior pastor, Pastor Michael Aubrey, and all other persons who are with us. I want to say blessed evening to you. We're going to open in prayer. Let us pray. Dear kind and heavenly Father, we give you honor, glory, and praise. Father, we pray and ask you, God, to give wisdom, oh God. And Father, as we deliver, Father, we pray that, oh God, that this will stir hearts and that we will be able to get this campaign going of awareness within the nation of Antigua and Barbuda. That, oh God, we can have advocacy, being an advocate for children, oh God, and young people. And so, Father God, we just ask you to have your way, oh God. We thank you again in Jesus' name. All right, so I'm Pastor Jermaine. Karen Jermaine. I am a counselor by under the government of Antigua and Barbuda, assigned at one of our secondary schools. And I'm also, of course, no stranger to you, pastor of Restoration Center Christian Union. So blessed good evening. All right, I will continue along the lines of the project. And I just want to say it's a very good initiative. It is relevant, it is timely. And so I want to just challenge us to be open-minded as we deliver, and then we could work together as a team to bring more awareness in Antigua and Barbuda so we can help our boys and girls. All right, and so we continue under the Convention on the Rights of the Child, and sometimes you hear me refer to as CRC. All right, so these are just some of the policies, some of the things that were put in place to help our children, anyone below the age of 18. And so in 1989, world leaders decided that children needed a specific convention just for them, because people under 18 years old often need specific care and protection that others do not. Okay, and so basically this came about like that. And the Convention on the Rights of a Child, CRC, is the first legally binding international instrument to include civil, cultural, economic, political, and social rights. And just look at some of the outcome of it all here as it relates to Antigua and Barbuda, CRC. On the 5th of October, 1993, you see some of what has come out. Okay, CRC has not been fully incorporated into Antigua and Barbuda national legal system. It does not take precedence over the national law. All right, and these are just some of the that have been implemented into the legislation. So we have the Child Maintenance, the Maintenance of and the Access to Children Act 2008. We have the Sexual Offences Act. We have the Domestic Violence Act 1999. And we have all these are down the lines of protecting our young people, our children, basically from neglect, child maintenance. And even as we go down further, we'll see various forms, education acts, and those sort of things. What is the child rights law and policies in Antigua and Barbuda? All right. One, the Child Justice Bill 2015, designed to prevent, I'm just going through quickly and then I share a bit on it, designed to prevent the criminalization of young people and prevent them from being stigmatized at a young age because of the negative impact and consequences of being caught up in criminal system. And if we just reflect back, remember some time back, we had a kind of uproar from the society where children who got into serious issues basically did not have anywhere to go, because we have just the boys training school, and that deals with it's not just for delinquency and that sort of stuff, but it is basically housing boys who are even needed that sort of support and assistance. And if you remember the outcry that we had some time back, all these were things put in place to assist when we had that outcry where young people got themselves in certain things, children, and even being placed in our only facility 1735 and so on, and the outcry that came from that. So there were things that needed to be put in place, and these are just some of the things. The Status of Children Bill, which provides for equal status of children. The Education Act, oh yes, and for that one, children have rights, a rights to an education. All right, and so this will address that instead of whether it's adults or for whatever reason they're home and not getting that education, there's something in place to protect them down that line of protecting them down that line. Okay, and so I wanted to stress on that this evening. Okay, you also have the Sexual Offense Act of 1995, all right, children under the age of 16, all right, and all these, as we, under the age of 16, you're seeing me, are you seeing me? Yes, okay, under the age of 16, excuse me? Oh, I thought somebody would say something. Hello?
Child abuse can be at any age.
If child abuse, anyone below the age of 18 is referred to as a child, yes. Okay?
So sorry, we're
Yeah.
just going to ask everyone to mute, please. We really appreciate the questions, but mute your microphone. And if you have a question, you can, there's a raise hand.
Yes.
So you can just raise your hand and but it interferes. We really appreciate the questions. So thank you. Just there's a raise hand.
Yes.
And let us know then. Thank you so much.
Okay. All right. And so, yes, here I just want to bring in that basically these are the different acts that were put in place for child rights laws and policies in Antigua and Barbuda, Domestic Violence Act. And even I could just stress on this a little bit, how this can impact, I'm just going to use a case right here, how this can impact our young people. And we're looking at the effects and all that on our young people. So I'm just bringing it in here, the importance of it. Knowing of a situation that even under the influence, just see how it all ties in, under the influence, boyfriend, a spouse, a boyfriend, domestic violence DV against the mother, and child seeing this under the influence, try to run, because not wanting to get involved and being drunk, the judgment being impaired and all that, the violence against the mother ended up turning towards the child, running after her and attacking her physically, and really injuring that particular child. So these are things that had to be put in place to protect our young ones. And so this project is very relevant and timely for this time that we're in. All right, the maintenance of and the Access of Children Act 2008 ensures children receive sufficient maintenance and protection. All right, the parents of a child or a person who assumes responsibility for a child, because it could be a guardian, it could be, maybe mom has died, whatever reason, shall ensure as far as possible that the child is protected from all forms of neglect, abuse, and exploitation. Okay, and so these are basically some of the child rights laws and policies that have been put in place in Antigua and Barbuda. All right, I will now turn back to, okay, I have one more slide. All right, this child abuse, okay, child mistreatment. Yes.
Wait, so Pastor Jermaine, were you passing it over to me for this slide?
I was.
That's fine. You can pass it over to me. That's fine. Okay.
Fine. I'll
Hold
pass
on.
it
Yes,
back
I
to
was
Dr.
just.
Bird. I saw you
Yes.
put it up, so I was just continuing. Okay, go ahead.
Oh,
Dr.
it's
Bird.
really up to you. That's fine. Yes, we're sharing it every.
Go ahead.
Pastor
Okay.
Jermaine, thank you so much, Pastor Jermaine. That was just really very strong, and I love this. The story is so profound and moving, and I'm sure it's moving to everyone because it just really captures why we have to put these child's rights in place. And so that just takes us into what is child abuse, and that's so much the crux of what we're going to understand, and to have a deeper understanding of its meaning and impact. So child abuse is maltreatment is a harm or risk of harm caused by a child by a parent, a caretaker, or another person responsible for the child's safety. There are 4 types of child abuse or maltreatment. There's neglect, there's physical abuse, there's sexual abuse, and emotional abuse. Neglect is the failure to provide for a child's basic needs. And this can be, lack of housing, appropriate housing, food, caretaking, safety. And there's also physical abuse, which results in injury as a result of punching, beating, kicking, biting, all these horrible things. And actually, Pastor Germaine is going to tell a story when I hand this back to her about an example of this, which is very, very profound. And there's obviously the horror of sexual abuse, and there's all emotional abuse, which is constant criticism, threats, rejection, withholding of love, support, and guidance. Now, physical abuse and sexual abuse are things that are tangible. You can see the bruises. The sexual abuse is a physical thing that happens. Neglect and emotional abuse are more invisible. There are words, there is an absence of care, and they're less visible. Is one form of abuse worse than another? They all have significant impact on the well-being. You can't measure abuse. Abuse has significant impact, and we will be exploring that today. So Tejali, and hope I pronounced that correctly, Ross raised the hand. Do you have a question? You can unmute and I'm happy to answer.
Excuse me, miss, I cannot hear you.
Everyone else can hear me? Yes, okay, so I'm sorry that, okay, I need you to mute again, please. Please mute, thank you. Thank you. I'm not sure why you're not hearing. I'll just speak a little louder. Pastor Germaine, are you hearing me?
I am hearing you, Dr. Bird.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'm not sure if on your side why you're not hearing. Thank you. So maybe you have to turn up your volume a little louder. And so this takes us to adverse childhood experiences, which we'll talk about. Adverse childhood experiences are experiences that refer to traumatic events that occur before the age of 18, and they can affect a person's adult life by negatively impacting their health and wellness, behavioral patterns, and opportunities for personal growth. And the initial adverse childhood experiences study was conducted with 17,000 participants. And I'll tell you a little bit more about this and how this actually came to be. At a clinic in the United States, dealing with a weight loss clinic being overseen by physicians, there was a cohort of women who were quite successful in achieving their goals and suddenly dropped out of the program. And the attending physician was very confused and wanted to understand why these women who were succeeding would suddenly drop out. And he wanted to understand what the problem was. So he called them in for interviews, and without exception, the women were identifying abuse in their childhood, with the majority indicating that they had been sexually abused. And so this intrigued the physician, obviously disturbed him at the same time, and he wanted to understand was there a causal relationship between the success of the program and the abuse of these women. And the women that were being surveyed were middle-class white women, and the clinic served about 17,000 participants across the United States. I need someone to mute their mic, please. Whoever's coming in, please mute your mic. Thank you. And so this study was then conducted with 17,000 participants, and they were able to identify that through this, that they would get to do relationships between abuse and the outcome of not just obesity, but physical health problems. And what they discovered was that the more adverse childhood experiences that someone had, and which is, of course, all the things that I described, the physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, it would indicate or increase the likelihood of developing chronic diseases such as cancer, heart disease, hypertension, obesity, and diabetes. So one study found that a child with 4 or more adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs, were 32 more times likely to be labeled with a behavioral or cognitive problem than a child with no ACEs. Another study found that students with at least 3 ACEs are 3 times as likely to experience academic failure, 6 times as likely to have behavioral problems, and 5 times as likely to have attendance problems. So ACEs don't just impact a person in the moment, as we can see behavioral problems with students. It also will affect an individual over time in significant ways, from health problems to behavior problems, to emotional problems, to psychological problems. And so now I will hand this over to Pastor Jermaine to explain more about the
Yes.
impact of adverse childhood experiences.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Bird. Yes, the impact of the ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. And I must say, it runs deep, really deep. And, you know, the higher number of ACEs, right? The number of times that, you know, this trauma may have happened in an individual life, you know, the higher the risk, and you see the more the impact you will see. Okay, and so just think about this leads to depression and panic attacks and all these other things, and anxiety and so on. Sometimes the impact here is so deep that persons end up being promiscuous, running, you know, here, there, and everywhere sexually, even without negotiating, without having, you know, that angle. You know, it's church and we speak of abstinence, but the real impact of this is not, they would not necessarily be abstaining, but be promiscuous and running around and be exposed to the sexually transmitted infections, you know, HIV, you know, gonorrhea, etc., syphilis, etc. All right. Even being more predisposed to taking drugs, misuse of drug misuse. All right, and the use of drugs. And I just want to bring in a case or two here of the impact of the ACEs on individuals and on children, I should say, as we're talking about child abuse. And I just want to bring a story in here where, you know, these things have no, should I say, no barrier, no status, no, you know, and coming even right down from early as 5 and primary school, and coming up into the system, the coming through the, you know, the secondaries and so on, undetected, no one knowing what has happened. And then when you basically get, I just want to use this story here, of a child who sometime back, way back. So, you know, it's a small community, you can't use names and that sort of thing, but I would have had the okay for my education officer to show the impact of what is happening among when I say among us in our nation, and so to see the relevance of this. And so having coming up from grade 6 into the secondary system, being raped twice, persons noticing the changes but didn't know what was happening. And what was so profound and deep about the impact of this adverse childhood experience is that, having seen 21, what should I say, cuts with razor on the hand, what are these 21, what do they, and they all represented something. And one was being born. If I wasn't born, then no one would have had to hurt me. And so it is deep. It is deep. The impact of childhood, being adverse childhood experience. It's deep. It is deep. And so this project, brothers and sisters, is so relevant to us here in Antigua and Barbuda, because it's present among us. Okay, and so the impact of child abuse also creates what an adverse child experience, also, you know, the emotional abuse, the physical abuse, and even bringing in here another situation of physical abuse. And please prepare for it, because it's yeah. Where a case where a young person was severely physically abused. No way other way of putting it. Where you could see all the different marks from a cutlass stroke on the body, and being stamped on the head and in the chest, and all the marks and the bruises are there. And so it is relevant. This project is relevant, brothers and sisters. Let us, as I said, I'm appealing here, let us just really see what impact on the emotions, on the physical, after emotional abuse, sexual abuse, physical abuse, and the impact it will have on our, and has had on our young people, our children below the age of 18 years old. Okay, and so neglect, even as we think of the emotional, let us look at just not being provided for, not having that support, that sort of support in the emotions and that sort of thing. Some persons will say, okay, well, I provide food, I give this, I give that, but also it is important. Tapes are being played and being rehearsed. You're just like so-and-so. And especially if that person who you're being referred to, compared to, is not really what we say an example, a role model. You'll just become like, maybe say dad is incarcerated. You'll just be like, and you'll be just like your father, and these things hurt, they pierce, and even as we think about, not only as a counselor, but as a pastor, I work with the community, and when we look at the household dysfunction, mother treated violently. And so what you notice, you're dealing with a family in the community in which we serve, and it's not only, it didn't just start there. The grandma was affected, the mother now is affected, and now the child, so it's 3 generations, a cycle, and we'll refer to it in the world, we said a cycle, but in the church, we said generational curse as something that is continuous. And so you see it there, and that childhood, adverse childhood, and you realize, okay, the mom went through it, and then now the child is going through it. So it runs so deep, and the impact, you see, the impact doesn't just stay as a child, goes as an adult, and then something is passed on even to the children. Okay, and so the impact of child abuse, the ACEs, can even impair our brain development. Okay, the child's brain development. Okay, we'll have a diagram coming up shortly, which will show, the difference between a child who hasn't been, has not had these experiences versus one who has had, many of these 2 to 3 ACEs, and shows the smallness and the shrinkage and the lack of development of the brain, the ventricles, the holes being wide and all that, affecting the proper functioning and so on and development of the child's brain, damaged behaviors. And so some of these children are so adversely affected by what has happened with the abuse that, the behavior, as I said, some will be promiscuous running around. Some, I know it's church, but I'm a realist and I will say it straight. Some will even turn to the point of having such mistrust. If it's a girl towards a male, and so they turn to same sex, they turn to different things, they turn to alcohol, they turn to misusing of drugs, they turn to snorting, they turn to different things. And so the impact runs deep, physical health problems, not considering how they take care of themselves and that sort of thing. Obesity can step in and so on, and other health issues. Okay, and as I said before, not knowing how to negotiate, this can turn to other things of, STDs and so on, and weakening of mental health, not feeling good about themselves, exposed to, suicide ideation, all sort of things, suicidal attempts, writing, already have how they're going to do this. I'm going to use the noose. I have it, have it written down. I'm going to swallow tablets, and the plan is all laid out. And some even go as far as the attempts. Okay, and so I will now turn over to Dr. Bird.
Thank you, Pastor Jermaine. That was just very powerful, just certainly very powerful. So and you talked about this diagram, and I think it just speaks so powerfully, because we do understand, of course, as Pastor Jermaine said, the emotional impact and the physical impact and those kind of things, but it also impacts our brain development. So this is a diagram, and it's an image. So the MRI is able to to take a picture of the brain, and when they did a picture of a brain of a normal child versus a child on the right with extreme neglect, we can see the change in the size of the brain. A normal child, a 3-year-old child, that was the development of the brain. Extreme neglect, that child was half the size of the development. That's the impact of maltreatment to a child. And this particular thing is provocative, because the child on the right is a child that was in an orphanage, where the child was not being physically mistreated, but being emotionally neglected, not held, not nurtured, not loved. So the child had clothes, the child had food, but had no love, no nurturing, no care. So we always hear how important it is to how important love is, and we understand it anecdotally. But here we have physical proof of how important it is to love, and how much love is and caring and nurturing is important for not just the emotional well-being of a child, but also to the development of the brain, our ability to think, our ability to reason, to make positive choices. And just a little bit more about brain development. Our brain develops in layers from the lower level to the higher level. And the higher level of our brain, which is our cognitive thinking, develops last, and the lower levels develop first. And the higher levels of our brain are responsible for not just our reasoning, our thinking, but our ethics and our morals, our spirituality. And when these areas of the brain impair, it impairs those higher levels of the brain to get developed, which then also impairs the ethics, the morals, the principles that are so important for our moral development. So this is why we always talk about why children need loving and nurturing. These are other ways that you can actually physically see the impact. So when a child is exposed to repetitions of negativities, of abuse, of neglect, of abandonment, it's going to impair their brain function. This is what you call, so toxic stress, they know, damages the brain. And when there's a repetition of these things, where the child is in environments where he or she is not safe, it will have these kind of negative impacts. So now I'm going to share a video with you. I'm explaining, it's a short video, 3 minutes, talking about adverse childhood experiences.
What would you do if you knew there was a way to help protect your family from future health problems, such as diabetes, high blood pressure, even alcoholism, drug abuse, and depression? The future sounds so far away, but to your children, every minute in their growing brain counts toward a healthier, more successful life. That's because positive experiences and environments help build stronger foundations for developing healthier brains. And healthier brains lead to greater emotional well-being, greater success in school, and brighter futures. Negative experiences like living in a house with verbal or physical abuse, sick or divorced parents, or emotional neglect create toxic stress that can hinder your child's brain development and lead to those unhealthy outcomes in the future we talked about. We've all heard of stress, but what makes stress toxic? When the weight from all those adverse childhood experiences we mentioned builds up, it can become too much to bear and affect how children look at the world. We call those experiences ACEs for short. Leaves you wondering why you've probably never heard of ACEs before. ACEs are common, but talking about them isn't. In fact, 2 out of 3 patients surveyed have at least one ACE, but they may not know how that ACE score is affecting them or their family. That's because a person with a high ACE score doesn't win. As the number of ACEs increases, so does the risk for negative health outcomes. A score of 5 or more on the ACE survey raises the chance of developing severe health concerns in adulthood to 55%. And those with 6 or more ACEs can die an average of 20 years earlier than those with no ACEs at all. Sounds scary, but the worst part? Parents with high ACE scores are more likely to raise children with high scores too. And it can lead to behavioral issues, school failure, and physical and mental problems. But even if you have a high ACE score, there's good news. Because now you know, and now you can change the direction of your life and help others in your family. The key? Well, as we mentioned earlier, ACEs are common, but talking about them isn't. Changing the conversation can help break the cycle and change lives. To start a new conversation, first take the ACE survey online. It's 10 easy questions that'll let you know if you or your family is at risk. Usually that's a score of 4 or more. Whether you score a 1 or a 10, tell your physician, and remember, a child's brain is always changing and growing, so every positive experience you provide is like another building block on the road to a healthy brain and a healthy future. Funded by a grant from State of Tennessee Building Strong Brains.
Thank you so much. So that, of course, sums up so much of what we're talking about. So basically, with trauma and the brain, of course, trauma occurs, as we've been able to illustrate, in many ways. It's emotional, it's physical, it's mental, and it's sexual. And these are very unpleasant topics. They're painful to listen to. They jar you. There's no amount of times that I hear them or I listen to or you're exposed to that it doesn't cut you deep as an individual and hurt you inside. But it's important, despite the ugliness, for us to be able to become aware so that we can take action. So a trauma, the need occurs, as I said, in many ways. There's the need for validation and nurturing are as essential as food for development. And that's really important. So, and that's why the example of children in the orphanage is an example of why validation is just, and need and nurturing is just as important as the food for development. Brain studies show that violence and abuse can cause a reduction in the size of the area of brain with learning and memory. So it impairs the part of our brain responsible for reasoning and thinking and cognitive function. And so, and also the emotional centers, you start so that you're always perceiving that there is danger. So always feeling threatened and unsafe. Violent homes produce children's brains that are very similar to soldiers who experience combat. That means go to war. So for a child in a violent home, their brain is perceiving it in the same way as someone who is experiencing a war. Very telling and very revealing to the impact it has. And this, of course, as we said, can lead to all the problems that Pastor Jermaine and I have illuminated throughout this, as the mental health, the emotional health, the behavioral problems, substance abuse, the health problems, obesity, diabetes, stroke, and heart disease. And normally, when we think about diabetes or heart disease or strokes, we think of those as very physical things from our DNA. However, our traumas in our life impact our health as well and have those kind of serious impacts as well in our health. And in terms of the neglect, so mothers who were struggling with depression, so they were more distant and disengaged, their children's brains, with the reactive part of their brain, the stress, fight and freeze, where they're the stressed out part of their brain, so to speak, those were more elevated, their stress hormone, because they didn't feel safe. So they were creating more trauma and stress for them. So I'll now pass you on to Pastor Jermaine.
Okay, basically, this is reinforcing, repeating some of the things that will happen due to the ACEs, the damage on the behavioral health. As we said before, they might be, they may not want to, take care of themselves. And so in lack of physical activity, so obesity is, can happen, being exposed, predisposed to using the use of drugs. Okay. And so we see there, it's an increase in risk behavior. So would have mentioned before, not being able to negotiate, not being able to have safe sex, and so unwanted pregnancies, and that will just add to the problems again. Already having so many other issues, dealing with what is happening with you or what has happened to you, and then now to become pregnant, and it doesn't have to be female only, because our boys do get abused likewise. And so exposed to drugs, as I said, health issues, acting out. And so they might be doing so many things, saying, help, help over here. And so sometimes we're seeing so many things happening, and we, sometimes we're quick to label, everybody as it's rude and that sort of thing. Sometimes they're just really acting out and crying out. And so you might see all this is happening. They might become violent. Yeah. And I can use a story right here. This was before I was even a trained counselor. I started in a private institution. I was working as a teacher, and that was my first thing. And I witnessed this firsthand. I was involved in this firsthand, where the child was basically violent to another child, and the administrations principal got involved to try and settle him, and he took up a half of desk to just hit her down with it. So then I had to call out to him. She's trying to restrain and, trying to hit and that sort of thing. He was like you're boxing, a boxing match. I gotta protect myself. I gotta protect myself. I gotta protect my mom. I gotta protect my sister. I gotta protect my brother. And I said, I wasn't trained, but somewhere down in my gut, as a Christian, something was just something was down there saying, something. So I asked the principal, give me a few minutes with the child, put him aside, and basically he, all this, the adverse childhood experiences have affected him so badly, even to further down to even, and we'll see that on our next couple of slides, where the home dynamics and everything with the divorce and all that and other things, and he just was angry, and it took him over, and all those experiences there, adverse childhood experience. And I tell you, it was painful as a young teacher to watch. I didn't know all what to do to deal with it, but I just wanted to bring that here, that, that it's really, really relevant among us. So the ACEs increase the risk of physical health problems, such as cancers, diabetes, heart disease, injury, maternal and child health problems, sexual transmitted infections, as we would have said before, and basically they're just at risk. Okay, it increases their risk. Can we get to the next slide, please? Okay, and so as we said, the ACEs, physical health problems, and as you compare this with a person with no adverse childhood experiences, a person with 4 or more of these experiences, you understand, it doubles. Think of it. Wow, doubles the risk, okay, of obesity. Having 4 or more doubles the risk of heart attack, strokes, and nearly quadruple the risk of emphysema. The risk for depression is more than, quadruple. And even if I bring in another example here, where one rape after another rape in succession, one behind the other, would have triggered, a child into basically writing a suicide note, drinking, you have the over-the-counter drugs, drinking the entire bottle of what remained in that bottle of pills. And luckily that somebody observed it, kicked in the door, and was able to get that child rushed and pumped out at the hospital. So I'm just saying here, just as this confirming what the studies have shown, having 3 or more or 4, of these ACEs, double, and in some cases quadruple the risk you know, of these things. Rage, I spoke of rage, I spoke of anxiety, I spoke of depression, you know, and so all this lack of focus, you know, can't perform at school, you know, that sort of thing, and, you know, and all these things, post-traumatic stress disorder, substance use disorder, suicidal behavior, as I just said to you in the case that I used there, or even to the point of death by suicide, okay? And so addictive behaviors, including food and other self-harm, the cuttings, not only on the legs, I've seen hands, I've seen occasionally you get even slices you see in the face, you know, and, you know, it's basically self-harm. I've seen burns using the ice. Somehow they use ice, and they're ice burns and matchsticks and do these things, or heat the spoon on the stove, and, you know, self-harm, and in places that you wouldn't want to imagine. Wow.
Thank you, Pastor Jermaine. I mean, I think it's just so powerful what you're saying, because it's very hard for us to imagine that right here in our nation, this is happening to the youth and the children in the schools. That, I mean, you're in the schools every day, you're witnessing it. I have been minimally in the schools and I have seen it, the cutting, I've seen it, and they've done it right in front of me. So it is a serious problem that might be like shocking that this is happening, but it is happening here. And when I've gone from school to school to school and different counselors, I've heard the same story in every school. So continuing, just like a summation against some of the social and personal issues that will happen as a result of ACEs. They're more likely to experience different challenges in personal issues. They have issues relating to education and job opportunities. They may themselves become a perpetrator of violence or a subject to it. So either they will actually act out in violence, or it makes them more vulnerable to experiencing violence because of being victimized. They continue the victimized process, or again, they act out. We talked about the teenage pregnancy. They may have an involvement in sex trafficking because being victimized, then these become different issues that they get caught in as personal issues. They may have societal issues. And that's the thing. ACEs doesn't just affect the individual or the family, but it also going to affect us as a society. There's a huge economic and social cost when we have children who are maltreated. There's the cost, I mean, to our healthcare system, and I mean that just seems so like, I mean, these are the less important things, so to speak, but the consequences are huge. We also compromise their opportunity to function as fully functioning and healthy adults. So we destroy their potential and all the contribution that they could have been making to society as well. So it leads to higher rates of offense and violence. And so that can impact our own safety as well. And it's often intergenerational. And so, you know, there's going to be, so the costs to us it's not just personal, it also costs us as a society. And just to give a little more statistics, 1 in 6 adults experience 4 or more types of ACEs. At least 5 of the top 10 leading causes of death, that's 50%, are associated with ACEs. Preventing ACEs could reduce the number of adults with depression by as much as 44%. And that's why it's so important for us to be here to understand this. And this is just a quick summary of it for us to understand how this impacts us on every level, which we've talked about again. So this is just a summary of ACEs has all the way up from mental development to our functions, to risk behaviors, to diseases, and to even early death. Quite provoking. And so I will just talk before I pass it over to Pastor Jermaine. What is trauma like right here on our island? Well, globally, we know that 20% of women and 5 to 10% of men report being sexually abused as children. 1 in 3 girls will be sexually molested before the age of 17. 25 to 50% of children report being physically abused, and 1 in 3 children have experienced significant trauma. So an estimate, say about 1/3 of our population has experienced significant trauma in childhood. In a 2003 survey of school children in 9 Caribbean islands, one of which was Antigua, it found that 40% of our youth reported that sometimes or most of the time they think about hurting or killing someone else. 40%. The Caribbean region has the earliest age of sexual initiation in the world. In the English-speaking Caribbean, 82% of young men and 52% of young women between the ages of 10 and 18 who were sexually active say they had sex by the time they were 13 years old. That's more than half of our young women, and this outrageous amount for our young males. 48% of adolescent girls in the Caribbean indicated that their sexual initiation was forced or somewhat forced. And there actually is no difference between forced and somewhat forced. It's all forced. It's just a matter of semantics or language. And forced or somewhat forced means that's rape. That's nearly half of our female population. 40% of Caribbean youth expressed rage. And in the study, they found that the leading risk factors associated with youth violence, rage was the strongest risk indicator. So there was a large report of rage. And in statistics in Antigua, a study done in 2007 found, and this was done between the ages of 13 and 15 students here, 12.6% of males and 22.5% of females between 13 and 15 had considered suicide. 9.3% of males, 15.7% of females had attempted suicide at least once. That's real numbers. This was done actually throughout the whole of the Caribbean, and these kind of percentages held up across the region. It wasn't Antigua alone. And if we think of, it kind of helps to validate that if it's estimated that 1 in 3, so 33% of children have experienced significant trauma, then that 22.5% of females might have some suicidal thoughts. There is a relationship. It suggests that relationship. So this is very serious. And this is what's happening right here in statistics and more things. I mean, we have very high incidence of school leaving failure. So there are other things as well, but that certainly is enough to jar us. And I'll pass over the
Okay. Yes, and so based on this slide, we are seeing that these are the reported cases of child abuse between 2010 and 2013. All right, and so coming out of the government of Antigua and Barbuda, citizen welfare or child services as we know it as now. And so as we look and we know, basically, we're seeing 691 cases, but remember, these are what were reported. So we're seeing here the amounts, the numbers for sexual. We're seeing for neglect and abandonment. You see the numbers here. So we have 112 for sexual, 337 for neglect. We have for physical neglect, we have 211, emotional and verbal, 23, incest, okay, within the family setting, 8, and the total was 691. And these, bear in mind, these are what were reported, okay? And this is just basically repeating some of the, giving us the warning signs of some of the red flags that we will see and saying, basically help, teacher, youth leader, whoever it is, I am drowning, I need help, okay, or neighbor or someone in the community. And so behavioral changes, fear, anxiety, depression, being withdrawn, these sort of things, wanting to go home, not wanting to go home, or go to certain person's home. All right, these are just some of the red flags, okay, warning signs. Over sexualized behavior, and especially, it's just not age appropriate. Some actions you may see, and these two tie in: the use of explicit sexual language that are not age appropriate. All right, the age inappropriate, right? Language that are age inappropriate. And so, just meaning that, say you hear, it could be a younger child, but speaking language that an older child would do, or an adult will do. Okay, sudden interest in sexual pictures, movies, media, so pornography and that sort of stuff. Okay, changes in sleep patterns, including frequent nightmare, difficulty falling asleep, difficulty falling or staying asleep. Okay, and even here, I'm sure, I think we have it down there. Just want to put in there, when you think of the nightmares, also some things you can see: frequent urinating of the bed. That doesn't mean if someone does that this is it, but this is also a red flag. Urinating and just cannot keep it, and so on. Changes in school, sports, performance. You might have a child who was very good, and had a lot of interest, and even it wasn't very good, but for fun, they had an interest in this, and they just don't have any interest in anything anymore. Their school, sports, frequent absences and so on. Okay, grades are just going down. All right, this might be a red flag, and remember, I'm saying might be a red flag. Okay, so we don't want people to just go around just diagnosis or anything like that and saying this is happening. We want to just say that this could possibly be a red flag. Okay, reluctant to leave school or activities to go home. So why might the individual might be running from home or wherever they have to go. Sudden loss of self-confidence and self-esteem. I'm stupid. I'm no good. I'm just gonna end up in prison. It's better just quit school, because just saying things that are just negative, no self-esteem. Might be a very, very beautiful individual or handsome young man, and just thinking, I don't look good. I am a slim person. I'm too fat. A thick person, I need, a slim person want to get fat, and a thicker person saying, the opposite again. So, a slimmer person say, I want to get fat. A thicker person wants to get slim, and so all these might be red flags that we're seeing. Sudden loss of self-confidence, rebellious or defiant behavior not previously exhibited. And I want to bring in here, just as that story I was giving you when before I was a trained counselor, with this young man. Basically, he had a problem with authority, blaming mom for whatever has happened home, and dad is not there, and with all the childhood experiences. But he, right here, as you see, rebellious, bringing in here that basically having a problem with female in authority. So I just wanted to bring it in here as a defiant behavior not previously exhibited, unusual eating habits that may lead to extreme weight gain or weight loss, unexplained injuries such as bruises, welts, bumps, broken skin. And I was telling you, all the sometimes the things you will see, maybe from the years, the hits from not conforming, but it could also be self-harm. Okay, trouble walking, sitting, running, because they might be in pain, and especially in the private areas and so on. Back might be hurting because of all the trauma and so on. Okay, trouble walking, as I said, these are the things. Sudden interest in interest and use of drugs and alcohol. Yeah, they find that the child is more wants to drink, smoke, and getting involved in drugs. Okay, attempt to run away or escape. Why is that child running? Why? Get to the bottom. Why are you trying to escape? Yes, sometimes it might be other things going on, could also be other things, but we're saying it's real and it's happening. And sometimes things some red flags are there, and we said this before, so it's just a repeat. Suicide attempts, and oh Lord help us that not complete attempts. Okay, and so basically here again, signs of physical, emotional abuse, and general abuse and neglect. Okay, and back to the slide, signs of physical abuse.
So sorry,
Okay,
Pastor Jermaine, sorry, I'll just, because of just a matter of
go ahead,
time.
go ahead, go ahead.
Yes,
Yes.
I'll just, but because this is pretty much a repeat, but just, these are specifying the signs of physical abuse. Very quickly.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, just very quickly, because you mentioned nearly all of them before. So just very briefly, just some additional things. If you see injuries that don't match explanations, if things that's our signs. We talked about most of the things here that that would be the signs of it, but what we're doing is just breaking them down into the specifics areas of when you would see these kind of responses would suggest the type of abuse the child is, or these signs would suggest the type of abuse that the child is experiencing. If it's emotional abuse, it would be like loss of self-esteem, and it could be like even headaches and stomach aches that don't have any medical cause because it's affecting the child is feeling. And we talked about some of those other things. And then some of this neglect is, of course, when you see hygiene, different things like that would show the signs of that. So those are just breaking it down. And so why don't people in Antigua and Barbuda, our citizens, not report? Why don't we report child abuse? The situational analysis that was done in 2015 showed that one, people don't report it because people believe the child will not get over it. Those are one of the causes that they didn't repeat. So there is the lack of knowledge of who to go to. That was a big reason. So 60% of people aren't reporting because they don't know who to go to. We're going to fix that tonight. People believe that the process will take too long, so there's not much of a point. So you see like 70% of people think it'll take too long. The biggest reason, two of the biggest reasons were fear of a negative consequence. People think it's not their business, and embarrassment of stepping forward. Or they believe that it doesn't merit report. But the three biggest reasons, as we could see, was not your business, thinking it could have a negative consequence, and embarrassment of stepping forward. Believing the authorities will not act, that's 70%. So these are some of the reasons that really impact why we don't act. And that's one of the things we want to change tonight, because what we really want to do is the opposite. Child abuse is everyone's business. That's what we want to get across tonight. We all need to be involved to protect the rights of children. It's not just, it's the family and that's their business. It is our business. It's society's business. They're vulnerable and we all need to be involved. And so to answer why people don't get involved, because they don't know there's services and resources, we're here to say that we do have services and resources. And here are some of what we have. If anyone suspects a child of being abused, they can call Family and Social Services at reporting at the numbers listed here. There's also a 24-hour hotline, 464-3531. When you are reporting, you do not need to provide your identity. You just need to provide the details of where the officer needs to go to. So you don't have to worry about revealed, and you are protected. Your identity is protected. No one's going to come after you, but you can report and should report. You can also call Youth Intervention. It's an 8-5 number. You can also call Gender Affairs, a 24-hour hotline. And school counselors, as Pastor Jermaine, can also be approached. So what can we do? We can advocate, we can speak up, we can reach out, we can report, we can seek counsel. The most important thing is to never give up. And we want to build gateways to protection, to preventing and stopping child abuse. We all have a role to play. You could hear Pastor Jermaine's advocacy. And the next slides will indicate some of those things. So let us all raise the issue. Call and write. You can write to your elected officials, educate them about the needs. That's what they're there for. They are our public servants. You can contact your local SUD, our faith community, to encourage well, this is a faith community here, but but let's all take part. Let's move forward to creating programs to supporting families. We can reach out to parents and children in our own communities to support them. If you think that a family looks like they're at risk, can you offer any support? Can you help? Can you provide guidance? And so in ways that, especially new parents that might be stressed, how can we help them? How can we provide support? How can we provide guidance? So it's not enough for us to say that's their problem as families. Yes, if we suspect a problem, give it an attempt, try. And remember the risk factors. Child abuse and neglect can occur in all segments of society. Pastor Jermaine said that before, but the biggest risks are families where parents abuse alcohol or drugs, and that can happen at every level of society, where they're isolated from their families or communities. They're not interacting. They don't have enough of a safety net. They have difficulty controlling their anger or their stress. So if you see parents who are very volatile, that can suggest that they can put their children at risk. They don't interested in their children's well-being or their safety, or they're struggling with housing or personal issues. Hand is raised. We'll get to questions shortly. I just want to run over that. And to recognize the warning signs. There's nervousness around children that might be abused, if they're nervous around adults, if they're aggressive towards other adults or children, if they are not able to focus or stay awake, if you see again sudden changes in behavior or personality, if they're acting out. We talked about some of those things. These are some of the signs. And if you suspect abuse or neglect is occurring, report it at all the services that are available. And finally, what you can also do is consider foster parenting. Family and Social Services Division are looking for more foster parents. Most people don't know that this is available, but they don't have enough. We don't have enough facilities to care for. So the Family and Social Services only has 25.
But London, I was right there.
Mute, please. Mute, please. Mute.
Because it's big.
Excuse me, can you mute, please? Thank you. There are only 25 foster parents. We're in need of 65. Foster care usually lasts between 1 and 2 years, and because every effort is made to reintegrate the children into the family, but if that's impossible, adoption is available. And again, that would be the hotline. And so the reporting procedure, if you suspect a child is being abused, you call Family and Social Services. The process is that they go to the police where charges are expected to be made. The case goes to the court for the outcome, where a child is to be removed. He or she is placed with a suitable next of kin. If there is no appropriate kin available, he or she goes to foster care. And if that is not available, the girls go to one of the 2 group homes. If there is no improvement in the house, the child cannot be returned, and adoption is then available. And the services are available for up to 18 years of age. Finally, we have a survey for all those to participate, which will be shared that you can to survey on, so we can gain more knowledge about adverse childhood experiences on the island and the impact. And can someone mute, please? I hear a lot of outside. Can you please mute? And finally, before we now can open for questions and leave the last words for Pastor Jermaine, I have someone with a lot of noise. I'm just asking, please mute. Thank you. For more information, you can contact info@ihOAB.com. You can go to our website, ihOAB.com. You can follow us on social media as well. So thank you all for being here. We're going to open it up. I'll pass this on to Pastor Jermaine for any final statements before we open this up to.
Yes.
Thank you.
Dr. Bird. I just want to insert here, just to reinforce that it's an awareness, and that we are willing to work along as a form of intervention with any family who, needs some help and so on. So it's not just knowing that there's a case, and we're willing to work with families as a form of intervention in our parents and so on. And so I wanted to just interject that there, as well as remember that this is present among us, and that we need to act, that we can save our children.
And I will also add a couple more things that before we open this up to questions, that we are inviting, we're going to be following this up with Train the Trainer, and Pastor Jermaine and I will be doing for volunteers who would like to come forward in terms of supporting the community with this information, to go out to parents, to go out to youth, to spread this information. We're only 2, and of course, so the more people that would like to be trained to be able to take this out, we're asking for volunteers. So please submit you can reach out to Pastor Jermaine if you would like to volunteer to gain more knowledge. Again, we will be having Train the Trainer, follow up from this for those who would like to do that. Finally, I'm going to ask everyone who has not filled in, you could please click on the chat. You will see a sign-in form. It's very important that everyone fills out the sign-in form. Click that link and just put in your information. We are funded by organizations, and you know they do require the sign-in forms to show that we are basically doing what we're being funded to do, and so your sign-in is very important. And so I see a raised hand. So anyone who has questions, we please invite. And again, please follow up with Pastor Jermaine or contact me as well for more information about coming on board with this and working with us in terms of reaching out to communities and working as an advocate and also to facilitate this understanding and this learning and this teaching in our communities, so for greater awareness and protection of our vulnerable. And so I saw a raised hand. I don't know, that raised hand seems to have gone. So we now open up the floor, or open this up to questions, and you can raise your hand or please, but we really invite questions or comments at this point. So please let us know any thoughts, reactions, but again, also fill out please go to the chat. You can also put your question in the chat if you don't feel like speaking or coming on board, but I'm sure we have some questions. Don't be shy. Anyone? Comments, thoughts, questions, experiences?
Hi, good evening, Dr. Bird and Pastor Jermaine and everyone else. Question, I note that the data is up to 2013. Would you have any most recent data that would speak to if the child abuse rate is increasing or is it decreasing?
Thank you. It was up to 2015, and the Family and Social Services, they actually do take, and we're just waiting to get that information. But from my conversations, there has been no indication of any decrease. I think it's more likely that there's been an increase, and not necessarily that there has been an increase, a real increase, but that there might be an increase in reporting due to more awareness. And I do believe, or I understand too, that COVID has also increased vulnerability of children, and because they are basically stuck in their homes as well. So I don't have more recent, but I can say that from like I said, my conversation, there is no, things have not improved. And I have certainly been seeing more in the news about abusers being taken to court, people reporting. So I think it's really important that the more reporting is done and actions taken to protect children. Pastor Jermaine, I don't know, I know you might not see statistics, but I don't know if you have just anecdotally seen any increase in your experience in the school.
Well, from my end, yes, and COVID hasn't helped. But as I said, I guess they'll have to do it on a national level. But I can say for me, yes, there has been an increase.
Thank you, Pastor Jermaine. Other
Thank you.
questions? Yes. Other questions? Thank you. Again, you can put the questions in the chat if you don't want to come on. We welcome all questions. And again, please please click the link in the chat and fill out the sign-in form. Any other questions? Two participants raise their hand. Yes, go ahead. Raise their hand. I can't even
Another
see.
Question.
Yes.
As it relates to young boys being abused, in your experience, is it that they are more likely to go to someone with the same sex when they get older?
Sorry,
What I'm saying,
I didn't hear the full question.
from what I know, right? From what I've seen, young boys, or when they're abused when they're small, they normally gravitate to men, so they have gay relationships. And I know for the girls, they normally become promiscuous. So I'm not sure why, I'm not sure if you can explain why the boys would gravitate to men when they grow older.
Well, I don't think there's a specific statistic for that. So I don't have any data indicating that they would gravitate to one or the girls would become more promiscuous. I mean, there's just an increase in likelihood of more sexualized behavior overall because of being exposed to abuse. And so so it just makes them more at risk, but there is no specific statistic again that I've heard that I have that cause them to go in one direction or another, but it does increase sexualized behavior in different directions, and or also to become predators as well.
Yes, I just want to add in here too, just as Dr. Bird, that there's no necessary data or evidence to support that. What was just asked, that they will be likely to go towards men, whether it's male or female. Some, because of the abuse, can be decide to be bisexual. Some may end up being with the same sex, but some might end up being promiscuous. So it's just, yeah. There's no evidence based in the sense that they're just more at risk, as Dr. Bird said.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for the questions. Anyone else?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Okay. Quick question. What about, just an advice I need on this. What about you adopt a child, said from the age of 4. Now the child is 12 years old. The child insists of asking for his biological mother. The mother is refusing to actually see the child or even take phone calls or anything from the child. And the child keep continually asking for his mom and acting out in ways of fighting, being bad at school, and etc. What would be your advice for someone to assist this child in?
The child needs help, as much help as you can go. And I know sometimes it can be difficult to find help, but I think this is something that you could call family services as well, or go to the school, talk with the counselors, seek as much help as you can, go to who you think you can get support from, a family doctor, a respected elder, someone in your faith community, a counselor. Professional help is definitely needed. So, I mean, sometimes finances might be difficult, but I would say don't give up and seek as much resources as you can. Pastor Jermaine, any thoughts?
Yes, I will say to yes, seek as much help as you can. Go to yeah, as you said, the counselors, the professional help, the even a faith-based your pastor, you know, encourage him. I believe it based on what you're saying, some level of rejection is being felt. So I believe down the line, that line, rejection needs to be addressed there where he's concerned, because he's probably feeling rejected, even though yes, the person, a new foster family has taken him in, he's still feeling the rejection of his biological mom, you know. And I'll say to the foster parents that they too can also seek not just individual counseling for him, but also for the family, and as well as still speak positively about his biological mom. Children, no matter, I've come across that no matter what could be incarcerated, the parent is, the biological parent is, they still have that yearning, wanting to have a relationship and so on. So you understand, because it's still, you know, part of them. And so as much as possible, speak positively about but you still let them know the truth, yes, but I mean, you know, sometimes it can go down the line of a negative way. And the more the negative is being said, is the more they tend to, I've seen that, rebel and will still want what you might be warning the person from. You understand? So I will say the family likewise will get help, and also try to speak positively, even down the lines of the biological mom. She's still biological mom.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? You can take one or two more before we, because it's now really 8:30, so we can maybe take one for one more question if you don't have one. Again, I'm just going to remind everyone to just click on the chat, click on the link and sign up, fill out the sign up form. Very, very important that you do so, or certainly copy and paste it and do it after this. So if we don't have any further questions, I will say goodnight, and I'll pass it over to Pastor Jermaine for a final prayer and any last comments that Pastor Jermaine might want to say. But I want to thank everyone for coming out to this. It means a lot to us. We've had a very big turnout, and it's not just important to us, of course, but I think it's important to the well-being of the nation as well. And so thank you so much for your time and being here with us. Pastor Jermaine.
Dr. Bird, yes. Thank you, Dr. Bird. I'd like to express thanks to Dr. Bird for helping us here, assisting us with presenting as a facilitator this evening as a Antigua district. And we're really grateful. I want to say thanks to the Family Month Committee for giving us the opportunity here to address trauma, and thank everyone for coming on. But I want to turn over to our bishop, to Bishop Clifton Joseph, to say some words, and he will close us off on any words that he may have to say to us as a district. Hello, Bishop? Bishop on? No? I'm checking. Okay, is Pastor Aubrey on? No?
Yes, I am.
Okay, Pastor Aubrey, maybe you want to say something on the behalf of the Family Month Committee, and as God leads, and close us in prayer likewise, Pastor Aubrey. Thank you and the committee for the opportunity.
All right, just want to say that the information that was given was very rich in the facts. Well, it's disturbing to an extent, but very rich, and it's something I hope we can build on in terms of those who may want training, and I hope that there'll be many more persons who will show interest in being an avenue through which God is able to bring help and deliverance to those persons who are in that particular situation. So I do express my thanks to you both, Dr. Bird and yourself, Pastor Jermaine, and I'm trusting that this will go a long way, as I have said, to helping us to help some people who are truly in need. All right, so I will close in prayer at this moment. Father, we give you thanks once again. We praise you because you are God. And we thank you because you care for every single individual person placed on planet Earth. That everyone is important to you, even those who have suffered abuse in all of the various ways where it's possible. We pray, Heavenly Father, that the information given and, Lord, the picture that has been painted would not just be for the sake of hearing and hoarding the information, but Lord, we would be, as it were, ambassadors and disciples and life changers. We would do our part to bring relief to those who are indeed suffering. Father, bless again each person whose ear heard, and bless the heart of every person. And may we do all we can do in the limited time we have, so we can help as many as possible. In Jesus' name, amen. Good night. God bless everyone.
Good night. Thank you, Pastor Robbie. Blessed evening to each and every one of you. Thank you for joining us. Thank you again, Dr. Bird. Good night, everyone.
Thank you, Pastor Aubrey and Pastor Jermaine. Thank you, everyone.
You're welcome.